Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. Here, we look closely at the intersections of the postpartum window, the Ayurvedic perspective on health and healing, and the universal mother principles that are the keys to giving and receiving effective care. Hello, I'm Christine Devlin Eck. I'll be taking you through interviews with professionals who are making a profound difference in the lives of their clients, conversations with individuals brave enough to share their stories of vulnerability as a way to lift up others, and my own journey through birth, parenting, caregiving, and building a conscious business. We are here to honor the sacred windows, the profound transitions in life that give it all meaning. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm so happy to welcome my guest, Morgan Henry Kerr, to the podcast today. Morgan is the founder of Am Mamo. She's a queer parenthood consultant and community builder who brings a rich tapestry of professional and personal experiences to her work. We connected, I think, on Instagram, and I immediately was drawn to the work that you do, Morgan. You combine your background in community building, placemaking, developing practices that infuse daily life with self-care, delight, and surprise. I love that so much. Crafted a unique consultancy geared towards supporting queer parenthood as a queer mom who has traveled the trying to conceive journey and now thrives as the non-bio parent in your family. Your insights are deeply personal, and I really appreciate the vulnerability and the honesty and the authenticity that you bring to your work, to working one-on-one with people, to also educating people. And immediately, after learning about you and your work, I was like, I gotta have more of this in our program because to me, conscious care, which the way that we teach it is about how do we meet each family where they are with the unique considerations that they have, and how can we show up in the best way we can for them. And so much of that requires us to be deep listeners and deep learners and understanding the perspective of multiple people and families. And so I really appreciate your openness to teaching our community and also to coming on the podcast to chat about it. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I love everything you just said. And I'm like thrilled to be here to talk more for sure.
Yeah. So, I guess I just kind of want to start by like, what drew you into working with birthing families? And I know that this is like, just like, I think for myself as well, so much of it stems from my personal journey. But what was the moment where you were like, I'm called here?
hmm Yeah, I mean, I think that it really all stems from my own lived experience trying to conceive myself. Um, Starting this process at 37, I was already considered a geriatric pregnancy, doing 14 unsuccessful IUIs, 16 total between my wife and I, and just like navigating was a completely foreign territory. Like, no one, it's not like anyone just knows innately how to get pregnant when you're queer. Like, we don't have the luxury, quote unquote, of, and I say this like, getting knocked up on a night of bad decisions and a bottle of Fireball. Like, we don't have that luxury like some folks do that are having baby after baby, right? And I say that kind of snarky, but like that's a very real thing that comes up when you're 10 IUIs in and not pregnant still. Um, and so yeah, it really just came from my own lived experience of like, initially I Am Mamo was like there's a lot of support when it comes to folks once they're like, late stages of pregnancy and labor and delivery and postpartum in general. There's a lot of celebration that happens when you get pregnant and when you have your baby. But there isn't, especially for queer folks, enough resources, enough support, enough education, enough like tending to while you're trying to conceive, which for most folks is an unforeseeable amount of time that can be months and years of our lives where we're spending every last, sometimes every last penny we have, every all, blood, sweat, and tears. Every ounce of us is going into this process month after month after month after month. And it really is repetitive grief once you get into 2.5 years, like we did, of trying to conceive, pulling out every old wives' tale we could think of. We literally had a pumpkin under our bed at one point, doing anything we possibly could think of or learn about to get pregnant. But the reality is that we were shocked at the lack of resources. Like, how is it that the only way that I can figure out, like, even the nuts and bolts of how I would get pregnant is from, like, the two lesbian couples on YouTube who happen to be vlogging their experiences? How is that? I mean, bless them for sharing and teaching us. But how is that the extent of how I'm supposed to learn how to do the most, like, intense thing of my entire life? Like, where is the support? Like, who administers an IUI? Who is safe? Where do I go? How does this work? Like, what are the steps? And so it left us really doing all of this extra work to try to figure it out, which ends up being a ton of, like, I talk about this a lot, like a ton of, like, added emotional labor, not just the lack of resources of how to get pregnant as a queer person using, artificial intelligence to get pregnant, but also, like, where is the support for queer folks specifically? Who has worked with queer folks before? Who understands what this experience is going to be like for us specifically when we're not getting knocked up at the bar on a Saturday night, you know? Um, and so really ended up having to piecemeal our whole process together because we're just kind of like figuring it out as we go along. Not to mention, like, the massive amount of just, like, the swamp of heteronormity that is the world of fertility, in terms of the language, in terms of, you know, just treated like, we're not totally sure what to do with you. So we're just going to toss you into infertile camp. I'm not infertile. My wife isn't infertile. We just don't have sperm that lives in our household. That's really the only difference. But to call a fertility clinic in our town and for consultation and be met with, like, oh yeah, we work with people like you. What? And yeah, that is your business. I have a uterus. I'd like to impregnate me, please. But how that landed was not how, it landed in a completely different way. And so just to feel that level of being so othered in the process, like, because I've never felt so like, had such deep moments of feeling like alienated, othered, like like subcategoried, like put over in this random other camp thing, ever in my entire life. I'm like, I am plus size, I'm tall, I'm this, that, and the other thing. Like, there's plenty of ways that I could have been like I've certainly been ostracized in my life. But when becoming a mom, like hands down the most important thing that I've ever done in my entire life, and like the most important role of my entire life, it's like to feel so other, like as if I don't belong there too. I'm gonna try really hard not to cry right now. Was intense and like unexpected and like really shocking. And I think that contributed to some of that grief too. It's like by default, me trying to get pregnant is hands down harder. My path is going to be hands down harder just because of who I am, not because of any sort of medical issues, not because I'm infertile, because I'm not. And again, blessings to anyone whose experience is infertility, because brutal, so difficult. But I'm not infertile, and um, and just that, like, feeling of just being so othered, like, you don't belong here, like, you don't belong in this space somehow, you don't fit the mold that the world of fertility has, like, sort of constructed. You don't fit in that. And so we're navigating all of that combined, like all of that is contributing to that grief too. So it's not just I'm not getting pregnant over and over and over and over and over again. And we're not even talking about loss. Like neither of us experienced miscarriage. None of us experienced like positive, nothing. It's just the grief of over and over and over again, not getting pregnant. Like I said, 16 total times.
Mhm.
But then on top of that, not being held, not being supported, not being fully resourced, dealing with, intakes that are very heteronormative, mom, dad, he, she, um, all of that contributes to that grief too. So we're kind of just like trudging through something that's like just because of all that feels so much harder than what anyone else has to experience. And we want this like about like when you add it all up, it feels like we want this, we're working for this 1,000 times harder than everyone else.
Mhm.
And so I think that knowing that, and especially when we talk about, you know, like folks right now who are scanning Google looking for support. My intention with creating I Am Mamo and my intention with having the inclusive birth worker guide is that I want the queer families who come up behind me to have readily available resources. I want them to have I want them to have like more queer providers in general too. And I also want them to have more folks in the birthing space who are standing there waiting for them saying, I'm here to hold you too. I've done the work. I know what this experience has been like for you. I am a safe space for you. And this is the work I've done to show up for you in this way. Because what I don't want to keep seeing happen is like what a colleague actually messaged me this morning was like, I'm pissed about this because I'm finding she's a midwife in Florida. And it's like, I'm tired of seeing like doulas putting, pronouns on their intake and reading one book about queer pregnancy and they think they're being an inclusive ally and they're not. And they don't then know how to hold folks because that's a false sense of safety. What I'm doing is making sure queer folks are better resourced and making sure and have safe spaces and making sure that birth workers have the tools they need. Because I realize at the end of the day, most birth workers were not trained either in how to support and be an ally and be inclusive and have inclusive practices in their business. So like that's a problem on its own, right? Not to mention just being able to advocate for queer folks in the world of fertility and during pregnancy and postpartum. There's like a huge gap there. There's a huge gap in the way that queer folks are being well resourced and supported and having readily available support. There's a huge gap when it comes to the tools that birth workers need to show up to be actually inclusive allies. And not just allies, but accomplices. Like, are you standing shoulder to shoulder with us in this? Because on some level, especially now, it feels like we need more than just like you walking us through the hours of labor and delivery and like the 6 weeks, which is like insane, of postpartum. Postpartum is forever. Hello. Um, we need you to we need you to do more than just walk through that with us. We need you to stand like shoulder to shoulder with us as an accomplice right now. Because along with the grief that comes with what we experience trying to conceive, a lot of folks have already experienced like massive medical trauma going into their trying to conceive process, whether you're the bio or non-bio parent. On top of that, every day, all the time, we're constantly being faced with essentially, and then sometimes literally, we don't want you to exist at all. So, like, how dare you feel joy? How dare you be in loving partnership? How dare you want to become a parent? How dare you, you know, have a child? We don't want you to exist at all. So there's then that layer that is very prevalent, and especially now. So what we need more birth workers who are actually doing the work, actually know what that experience was like for us, who actually know what the trying to conceive journey and before and the TTC journey and like all the adjacent factors, to let that then, especially when we're talking about supporting folks in postpartum, understand that like Your journey started with them when they, you had a consultation, signed a contract post baby. But you got to understand way before that. You got to understand what that whole journey was like. And by the time they get to you in postpartum, they're probably already stacking so much. There's so much already underneath who you're going to see in their postpartum phase. Like there's going to be so much residual and compounding stuff there that's going to impact their mental health and their ability to settle into postpartum that you have to know about. Because otherwise, I'm going to just say, I think that you're otherwise doing that client, that family, a disservice because you're not getting below the surface. And in reality, if they don't trust you enough, you're definitely not getting below the surface because we walk around every day with a sense of hypervigilance. It's hard for us to trust people in general. So
Mhm.
we're looking for where's the smoke and mirror kind of vibe. Like we're looking for it's just kind of like just it just sort of happens because of the way that we're kind of forced to navigate our lives in some ways. So imagine then the contrast of that when having a queer client who finds easily finds because you're making it very abundantly clear to them right away on your social media or your website that you are a safe space and this is the work you've done and this is how you want to hold them to in postpartum. The amount of nervous system regulation and like rest and safety that then both the birthing person and partner and other family members who are going to be parents can rest into
Mm.
is significant. And that is the goal. That is the whole point. That's the whole point. That should be your whole job is to let them like tend to them into that space of full rest and safety. And so understanding where that family came from before they got to you is a huge way because this is so much more than just this is so much more than just pronouns on your intake. This is so much more than that. And it's about nervous system regulation and safety. And beyond post your time with them postpartum, it's like how do you set them up for success beyond you? How do you do the work to say like these are the I've done my homework and these are like the community groups, these are the parent circles, these are the queer therapists, these are the like yoga spaces, these are the whatever spaces. Here you go. I've created this for you and here please take this so that you leave them 1,000 times better than you found them and you're setting them up for success beyond you because like not all of us want to be in like the Stanley Cup Lululemon, walking mommy group things. You know what I mean? Because we don't see ourselves there, maybe don't feel comfortable there, and we don't want to have to unpack our whole trying to conceive and labor story for folks who just like want to like get in the goss of what it's like to be a queer parent, whatever. And that's so that's so real. But there may be other queer groups in person or virtually that you could provide to them. That's like, here, I've made this for you. This is like a list of resources that are readily available to you if and when you're wanting support beyond my time with you. That's
Mm.
that's massive.
So much. It's actually, something that is so key to how we train doulas anyway, is creating circles of care and resources and making sure that every single person feels like, okay, like there are helpers. Wherever I need a helper, like they're there and I'm
Mhm.
not alone. And that's a huge part of it. And I just really appreciate so much hearing it's, in some ways, there are pieces of what you've shared that are so universal. It's like when we look around and we see no answers, there's like this extra layer of trying to suffer through something all alone without example or mentorship or counseling or anything.
Mhm.
and how that drives us to create something that similar, to what you have, which is your work, and, for me, which is my work. But so I, number one, just want to really honor that, you have gone through this journey and you're creating such benefit and gift for so many others who are following. So thank you for that. And I also just feel like I want to ask, so yeah, you brought up a lot of layers of things that people are handling, which is, for me as I'm listening, it's that sort of underlying stress that is always there. Is this a safe place for me to be in? Is this a
Mm,
safe person for me to be around? Is this a safe place for my child? Like there's always this layer of assessment. And, to some degree, I think, women can, relate to that. Like, am I safe here? Is this, there's a certain underlying vulnerability in a culture that we have. Um,
mm,
and, but there's more to it that I want to ask you to go a little deeper in terms of the experiences that people have receiving or not receiving medical care specifically, because when we're going through this um, trying to conceive journey, childbirth journey, we have, like, we're in the medical community, no matter how sort of natural or midwifery or home birth or free birth or whatever, like this is a medical event in some ways. It's a natural, beautiful, you know, we're not sick, and we're interfacing with a community that traditionally hasn't made space for us. And so I'd love to ask you to go a little bit deeper on the real experiences of what people have and how they may have just avoided medical care or faced insurance, inability to be insured or underinsured, because this is directly related to the whole picture experience as well.
How are you sharing your gifts and passion for caregiving with others? In a world where education and awareness around the postpartum window is lacking or missing from our modern systems, we have a profound opportunity to shift that paradigm. You may be a few simple offerings away from making a truly impactful difference in the lives of mothers and families in your community. We are here to support your journey in the ways that work best for you. Schedule a conscious care strategy session to meet one on one with me, and let's identify the right next step for you to begin a path of conscious care for new families that fits your life and your needs. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session to schedule a time that works best for you. That's www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session.
mhm. Yeah, I think I can speak to that as a deeper piece, and I think that I can also speak to it as like a really, I don't want to say fixable, but really doable tool for folks in the birthing world to look at and do the workaround. Is that like, yeah, I mean, even for us, like by the time we got to, you know, by the time we even got to the end of pregnancy and looking for like potentially looking for support at that point for labor, we were like so exhausted by the whole process. And so literally couldn't really even fathom having to jumpstart another huge search for a doula, so the point we didn't even hire one because we're like, we literally just don't have the energy to like figure this piece out too, you know. And I think that that's true for other queer folks too, that they've had to do so much of this work alone. And that other piece that you said of like being alone and feeling isolated is so real as well. That's a other huge layer of feeling like, why do I feel like I'm in this alone? Why do I feel so isolated in this whole process? um and I think that part of that again goes back to what I was saying before of like, we don't want you to exist at all. So we're just defaulting to like, okay, well, if we don't see ourselves anywhere, and we don't feel supported anywhere, then we will just default to doing it alone too. If there's nothing here to support us. So I think that that just shows up as another layer. And I think that like because of that, then yeah, we're just kind of forced to do it alone and don't even realize. I actually had someone tell me this last week on my Wednesday session last week that people don't they've heard from queer folks that say they don't even realize that having a doula team is something that they could access as a queer person. Like, how is that possible? Like that it's just something they just don't think is like available to them, which is shocking, but not shocking when you think about all the things I've already said.
Yeah, it's
It's like,
actually
is this for me too? Like, can I have that too? Like, is that available to me too or not? And so that even is going to stop someone from even seeking out the opportunity if they did still have like capacity and like a mental like fortitude to find someone. The other piece of that is that like, yeah, you may live in LA or San Francisco or Seattle or like other places. Even when in New Hampshire is where you are, right? Or Boston, Massachusetts. Yeah,
Massachusetts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there may be areas where you live as well, where it's like, yeah, there maybe are more readily available like queer providers and stuff like that. But like again, that's not true everywhere at all. And so you're kind of just like left with what you've got, like left with whatever's being available to you, and that's not only is that like unfair and like sad because you can't just pick who's a good fit for you, but it's also again creates a huge opportunity to feel completely unsafe and be in harm in some way. So I think there's those pieces are like missing links in terms of like the way that queer folks aren't getting the care they need because they don't think it's for them. They're exhausted and can't even imagine having to search for someone that's for them that they vibe with. And the other piece is too is that like that hypervigilance that we're facing all that we feel all the time leads us then to, and this is something that I've talked about too in my sessions is and in my course certification is that like okay, you could have, let's say you put your pronouns in the bio of your Instagram and you updated your intake during consultation to again have pronouns and to like you have open-ended questions and you're like getting to know your family. But then it seems like that inclusivity piece just dropped there. And now you're like, hold on, wait a minute. How come it feels like now that something's changed and like you don't have any idea who you're talking to, or you not just said like use the wrong pronoun again, but there's this obvious feeling that like you have no idea who we are anymore. You know what I mean? Like you have no idea now who you're talking to. And it's like, "Oh, I think you just decided that putting the pronoun on your intake form, like a space for my pronoun, and like maybe, like I said earlier, like you read one queer pregnancy book now, but now here we are, and I just felt like we just left any container where you've infused your business with inclusivity. You know what I mean? And so I think at that point, that trust just dropped. That bottom just fell out. And now you're at a fork in the road where like you've just lost all trust of that client to where you're either asking them to now just thicken their skin and deal with it, even if like you're super well-meaning and you're like great and you still want to you want to work with everybody and you're like a well-meaning person, you're a well-meaning doula. But at that point, the bottom's fallen out in terms of trust. And so either you're asking that client to like be okay with that and deal with it, or you're going to lose a client depending on their capacity, depending on how strong their voice is at that point. And again, so then again, they're being asked to like be put through this like a massive emotional labor to now like sort of do you a favor to like stick it out or not. And it's like, I thought I was going to be held here. Like, why am I feel like I'm doing the work again? And so I think all those types of things are things that become barriers to people getting the help they need in the first place. And again, having that space of safety And I think that queer folks are being put through that all the time in our lives. Like I said, it's not like unique to a doula relationship. It's not unique to like it's like something we're like dealing with all of the time. So it's like how can we say like I know that you deal with this all the time and I am committed to making sure this is not a space where you're having to still carry all that into my office with you. Like let me just take that for you and we can just I'll put it in a cupboard over here somewhere and I'll hold it for you because while you're in here with me, like you're good. You can tell me whatever you want to tell me. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. You know, you're asking open ended questions. You're not making assumptions. You're checking yourself on your own bias. And you're like, you know, you're very heteronormative, binary language around birth. And you're just like holding. And like you said, you're listening and you're actively listening and you're actively learning. Um, I think those things make all the difference in the world because I think that it's important to understand that by default, we're looking for the spot where we're going to stop trusting or we're not going to trust to start with. And so we're not going to seek care at all. So all these little things are the things that whether you're full spectrum doula, whether you work in labor and delivery, you work in postpartum, like all these things are the things that are the tools that you need to know to help inform the way you care for folks. The insurance piece, I can't speak to that specifically in my own experience, but I'm sure that especially folks that are non-binary and trans, they're already experiencing issues with insurance just to get receive medical care in general. And I think that the language piece and the assumptions and the like really binary language, the mom, dad, the mama bear language, the all that stuff can be like super harmful. And it just sounds like words to most people. Like, why is that so important? But it is really important. And it sure, please do something versus nothing. Sure, definitely put pronouns in your intake. Definitely do an audit of your website, your Instagram, your wherever you are showing us where you are for sure, make your allyship known from the jump because there's so many queer folks googling right now looking for a doula and they're looking for you. And if you don't tell them that you're there to hold them to and that you're safe and that you're inclusive and you've done the work and this is how, then how are we going to know that? And you got some people like, well, I'm hesitating because I think I'm going to do something wrong. Well, yeah, you might, but like that doesn't matter. Like you still got to do the work. You still got to do something. You got to do the work to actually show up because the safety net needs to be built stronger than ever. And it needs to be built as quickly as possible.
And it just feels too like if the work is listening and learning
Mhm.
and approaching every single client with no assumptions, with wanting to know more, wanting to understand, seeking to understand, assuring them that this is a safe place, you don't have to carry this here. This is not hard work. This is being a good human work. And so this is conscious care. This is leading with knowing that this is a unique person. There is no other person like this in the world. And how can I best support you and create a feeling of safety and a safe place for you to heal ultimately? And, we always encourage our students to, as they're going out to do this work, ideally, we want to meet people while they're pregnant or beforehand, even. Like, we want to make sure that they are familiar with us and we know them and that we have a sense of like those layers. And there are some times where clients are going to come in and they're already in the postpartum window. Maybe they're already really struggling. And then we've got to kind of backtrack and really try to understand what's going on. So I would love to just, as we have a lot of care providers who are listening to this podcast and this conversation. And, you know, you've mentioned the sort of way that we put ourselves out there on our social media and our website. But beyond that, like when you gave us a little glimpse of like sitting in a space with a client, but what is something that we can do on like a really practical, like this is part of my, you know, my check-in process or my intake process or something that really helps to communicate to this person that I see you and I'm here to care for you in whatever way that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. I also wanted to speak just super briefly to what you said before around, yeah, just like how this needs to be just like like a universal sort of like education. Like is this not like this is a stack of intake for your straight clients, cis het clients, and this is a stack of intake for your queer clients. Like this should be something that's just like baked in to the foundation of your practice for everyone. This is just like universally what you should be doing as a practice, as a birth worker, to hold people. It's not where there's not like different lanes here. There's not like different like it should just be like the foundation of what you're doing. So, anyways, I just want to speak back to that. I think in terms of practicality, I think that there's like, a combination of things. Like I sort of said before, it's like how is your commitment to being an inclusive ally, how is the thread of that running all the way through? You know what I mean? When you think about from the outside in, because likely we have found you, like I said, social media, website, or like however you're like sort of advertising yourself or marketing yourself in the community. Like that's like the first step. We're going to see you somewhere on the outside, right? And then there'll be layers to you from that point. So like, how is there like a really consistent thread of you showing me your allyship from that whatever that first spot was all the way through until I'm with you in your space, all the way through our time together, and then beyond is like the bonus. But like that commitment to the thread of that all the way through is important. That consistency is important. Because again, you don't want the bottom of trust to fall out. You want to like run that all the way through. So I think that like once I've gotten to you in terms of your physical space and wherever you're doing your consultation or being with you, like am I seeing myself represented back to me in your space? Like was I seeing myself represented back to me in terms of like, were all of the people in your Instagram like clearly cis het straight folks, white folks, whatever? Or were there like people like families mixed into your content of like, oh yeah, cool. There's like a lesbian couple, or there's like a trans couple. There's like, how am I seeing myself reflected back to you? Same way can be true once I'm in a physical space with you that is like your office, your consultation, whatever, of like, how are you showing me that like, yeah, maybe your bookshelf has like, queer pregnancy books. You have like a committed library of literature books that you've read that you have available for your colleagues, you have available for your clients. Like what's your background? Like what education have you been doing? Like are you do I see like your certificate of completion from my guide? Have you seen whatever? Like what am I seeing here? And then how do I feel here? How do you talk to me? Are you talking at me? Are you or are you like holding space for like giving me space and time to talk about my experience? Like, are you really curious, like genuinely engaged with like asking questions around like what's really most important to me? What's most important to us? What's most important to my family in terms of what we're really needing during this journey and this experience? What are the things that like tell me more about the things that you really struggled with during your trying to conceive process? Like what are ways that I can best inform my care of you in this relationship? Like just ask way more questions than in making assumptions. um and letting them tell you like just even having that safe space to offload some of that is going to set them up for success moving forward. I mean, and in all reality, even if they like didn't for whatever reason decide on another path in terms of like their doula care, like even just knowing like I had like this like the most like nurturing experience, like sitting with in this consultation where I just felt so heard, seen, and held. Like I just felt like, man, I just felt like so tended to. Like I feel like no one gave me the opportunity to tell my story until that moment. That's massive. That's massive.
Mm.
And then of course if it leads into like feeling like there's a good vibe and a good rapport to where that person does end up being their postpartum doula, then clearly that sets them up for just like an amazing experience of recovery and beyond. Um, but I think it really is like that overarching feeling of like, yeah, does that doula understand where I came from? Or am I
Mhm.
now sitting in a consultation explaining to you like why I have to adopt my own kid after this? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? See the difference? Like, and so I think it sounds just like, oh, well, that's obvious. Of course, we're here to listen and hold space and do all these things and tend to. But I think there's a different flavor of it. There's a different level of importance to it or something. Like there's just something that is more potent and more profound in terms of like the power of holding a queer family at that point like that because of what they presumably went through before they got to you is just gonna have been a lot. So to be able to like, and they've had a baby on top of all of that too before they got to you. So, which could have brought up a lot in that moment in terms of body dysmorphia or just am I like for the non-bio parent, like, oh my God, like who am I now? Like, am I going to feel like their nanny or am I going to actually feel like their parent? Like, what's my role? How, like, and supporting them too, but in a different way, recognizing their own individual challenges potentially of like, who am I in this when I didn't have my kid, All those different considerations that are really different too than I think if you ask any cishet dad and you ask like a queer, cis woman like myself, I'm a non-bio parent, like who this, 14 IUIs up to that point, switched gears and then became the non-bio parent who then adopted my kid. Like, you know, I have different experience than a dad, a cis dad, and a different experience than my, cis queer wife who had our daughter. Like, those are all things that are important to like take into consideration when you're thinking about like how can I best care for this family. And it's different than just like, of course all families are different. It's different. It's like it's the difference between equality and equity, right? There's a difference between saying like, of course I want to work with everybody, everyone deserves equal everything, like of course I want to work with all families, of course I'm here for all families. Okay, there's great. But equity is different, where you're cool and you're also fully understanding like the experiences that I had as a queer woman are different than a cishet woman just by default. Like my experience was so different than most cishet women's experience getting pregnant was. What were those differences? What were the challenges that I faced as because I'm queer that are totally different than a cis heterosexual straight woman had getting pregnant and navigating the world of not even fertility, just navigating the perinatal space into like through getting pregnant, pregnancy, delivery, beyond. Like those are two very different things, very different things. And by default, because I'm queer, by default, being trans and non-binary and pregnant and navigating that space and navigating pregnancy and navigating labor, navigating postpartum are going to be challenging, difficult, different, harder, more exhausting, more taxing financially, emotionally, mentally, by default because of who we are. There's nothing physically wrong, medically wrong with us, just because we don't live inside the binary of heteronormity in the world of fertility, period. And you just have to know that.
Yeah.
Like I know that I just said a lot of things, but like the practicality, there's not like, it's not putting a rainbow sticker on your office window. It sure isn't that. You know what I mean? It's deeper than that. Sure, that's a signal and that helps sometimes if we see the other pieces in place, if you're not just tokenizing us during Pride Month, right? that sticker is there all year round, and then we see other bits and pieces too, like other parts of your commitment, cool. That's a signal for us. Like that helps for sure. But there's just like so much more to it than that.
There is. And there's also, you know, I we talked too about the idea that we don't have to be like, we may not be the best care provider for every single person out there. There is such value in having a care provider who has a shared experience of you. And so, it just, if we are lucky enough to be in a place, for example, where I am, where there are a lot of doulas and there are a lot of non-traditional families out there outside of the dominant social norms, like people have a lot of choices and they can find midwives who understand on a personal level the queer experience.
Mhm.
And sometimes there's not going to be all those choices, but regardless, to have that understanding that when we're sitting down with a family who's gone through a whole host of layers of experiences that we haven't, just knowing that gives
Mhm.
us a toolkit to be able to really hold space in a more informed way. And
Exactly.
that's exactly why I wanted to have you come on so that we can really emphasize that. And of course, everybody honestly listening to this podcast knows that every person is going to have their own unique layers and different traumas and different hardships, but we are committed here to really understanding as much as we can about each family and how that not only like gives that family a better experience, but how that creates just a more compassionate world all around. Like what actually happens when people are cared for and how does that ripple out into their parenting, into their
For sure.
businesses, into communities at large. And
For
so,
sure. It's a
yeah,
huge effect. Yeah, and I mean, even being a good ally could mean, like you said, if like, sure, you have a consultation with a queer client, and for whatever reason, you're just like, I don't know, you're just not feeling each other for some reason. Could just be like, I don't know, something, something totally fine. Just like, maybe want something like someone with a different personality or flavor, like our vibe is like off somehow. Um, but if that doula also has a list of referrals to other queer providers, and not just like in the birthing space, but like I said, therapists, acupuncturists, yoga, whatever, support, other types of support. If you as a doula also had a list of referrals that you could easily send during that consultation of like, hey, if we're not don't feel like we're a good fit, or if that's come up in conversation somehow, like here's a list of referrals if like you'd rather have like a queer doula, if you like are looking for this or that the other thing, that and is on its own is allyship, because again you've done the work to like understand that that's maybe could happen. And if I'm not the best fit for you, here's a list of people that I have personally vetted. And it could be that maybe they're not necessarily queer providers, but they're like other allies that you have vetted, are allies, and you can send them those resources too at any point. Like I said, whether it's books or other resources, at any point you have that readily available for them. That on its own is allyship, because you've done that work too.
I love that.
Hmm.
Morgan, I am really excited to have you come and teach with us in just a few weeks, really. But for, those who are listening, who want to know where they can learn more from you and engage with you, where should they go?
Yeah, if you have queer folks in your community or ones that are looking for resources around trying to conceive, like send them to I Am Mamo on Instagram. And that is one of my accounts. If you're a birth worker and you're like, yo, like I need tools like yesterday, you can go to the Inclusive Birth Worker Guide. Every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, I do like a reflective session, which there'll be one today, where we just talk about like, yeah, let's just have a space to talk about like asking yourself a question of like, yeah, would queer clients think I like from the outside looking in, would they think I'm safe? Like, what is my why? Like, how do I show up better? Where are the ways that I can kind of like examine my own biases? We just spend some time like pausing and talking about and reflecting on those questions. And then I share more about my inclusive birth work certification, and kind of what that entails. And so we do that every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. There's a ton of resources on that account as well. I have a toolkit that's really great, a birth worker toolkit. That's like it's like a quick wins, like what's like a quick audit you can do just like to refresh and like understand like why using inclusive language in your social media and your website is important is like a signal to queer clients as like a first look. But really that certification is like your deep dive into like really going for it and really showing up. And like I said, there's never been a better time than right now for more birth workers to like get on board with this, really do the work to be like a genuine and authentic ally, and so that we can really build a safety net like in a genuine and authentic way, is like as strong and as quickly as we possibly can. So that's the place to be if you're a birth worker and you're wanting to like get more resources and be in community and get more information and tools. Because like I said, I know that you're so well meaning. I think that birth workers just don't have the tools they need to like show up. They need someone to tell them that they need to stop hesitating and just do the work and stop hesitating and just stop hesitating and like do the work. Happy to be that reminder, that permission slip, that like I got you, I got the tools, just get in here, let's go. Yeah, so those are the two places you can find me where I'm at most of the time.
Uh, well, I just really appreciate you and the time that you've spent with me and the work that you're doing and just your energy. And thank you. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, same.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Center for Sacred Window Studies has been training postpartum care providers, professionals who work with new families, and individuals passionate about postpartum care since 2018. We regularly host live free events alongside our online and in-person training and certification programs. Hop on our newsletter list to get direct access to all of our events and community support gatherings. Our mission is not only in training conscious postpartum care providers, but in fostering a robust, informed, and thriving community of postpartum professionals. Once you step inside, you're family forever. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com to add your email to our newsletter list. You can support our work by subscribing to the Sacred Window podcast and sharing with someone you know who would love it. Thanks for being here and participating in the culture-wide shift that recognizes the need for and the importance of conscious postpartum care.